Um, yeah, hello. I'm gonna be presenting about, yes, it's recording. Hi, I'm Dima, or karlicoss, as people know me on the internet. And yeah, today I'm gonna be presenting human programming interface. Um, it's kind of random name I came up with because couldn't come up with anything better. But yeah, it's essentially it's a programmatic API to my or your personal data. And I'll elaborate on. I mean, it's probably easier to show than to talk about it. So I'll just click on some. Oh no, I need. Sorry. Apologies. Computers are hard. So, and as an example, what I mean when I talk about programmatic API is you can basically import your data as in this case it's Python objects, but I mean, in principle, it doesn't have to be Python. I think it can't, it's programmatic API. It could be in any programming language. It's just I program in Python. But yeah, the basic idea is that you can just import your data, and then you can do whatever you want with it. So in this example, we can put it in pandas data frame, or we can use some library to visualize the data. We can use standard Python. Say we want to process some annotations and figure out which ones which articles I've been annotating the most, right? Because I want to recommend some blog posts to my friend. So again, you just import the pages as Python code, and no tokens, no parsing, nothing involved. Of course, it is somewhere, but at least it's not there when you need to use the data. Yeah, or like again, you import your Facebook messages, and you can do some processing in language you already know. Yeah. Sorry. Maybe another example. It's a whole. It's a post I published a while ago. I've been trying to. I'm a fan of quantified self, and I like looking at health data, trying to find some correlations, that sort of thing. And I was wondering how, when you do exercise, your exercise tracker will sometimes give you color estimation. And I was curious how it's computes it, because it's not something unless you're in a colorimeter device, you can't really know it. So I was trying to reverse engineer a model, how it works. And again, there is lots of like random, various data analysis involved. But the point is, again, to actually use the data, you just import it and you carry on. Right. And yeah, there are. I guess I'll just show the other demos quickly. Maybe we can I can show more later. I'm using it to enhance my web browsing, for example. It's my another project from Nisha, and the idea is that when I visit a page, it shows me all the context in which this page occurred in my browsing history, regardless of which site it was, whether it was in instant messaging, in my notes on my computer. So it kind of unifies all sorts of data sources to enhance my web browsing. And again, I won't focus much on this because it's a whole separate thing, and you can read about it later. This is, for example, Grafana integration, where it's sort of like so. Again, because it's a programmatic API, it's easy to upload or connect the data to anything else. So in this case, it's InfluxDB. So I can just, with a small adapter, I can just transform the data and upload it. And for example, here you can spot a ski trip because it's a drop in pressure. And here you can spot, me going to work because it's also tiny, drop in pressure and the rising temperature. yeah, anyway, I guess, and maybe later I will show an interactive demo in Python, messing with these objects. So as for specific data, it supports, there are quite oh no, there are quite a lot of modules, and it's, again, I won't name it all because you can just find it in README. But the idea is that a module is like, it's just a Python, it's a Python module, so it's just a Python file in the simplest, and it's quite extensible. Here's, for example, another person who's hacking quite a lot on it, and they have completely different modules from me, and we can compose and overlay these modules. So, for example, I'm using the Discord module from that package. So I'm kind of, if I don't know if any of you are Emacs users, but I'm kind of imagining it could be sort of similar to that. So you have all sorts of, you have a core, Emacs core, and you have all sorts of packages which kind of interoperate. Yeah. I guess as for motivation and story, why did I build that? Because I've always imagined as software should enhance our cognitive abilities, and computers are very good at storing information, searching information, analyzing information. But the reality is that we've got lots of services, and the data is usually siloed in all the different services. So, for example, say you recall discussing, I don't know, some Hacker News post with your friend, and you want to recall something from the discussion, but you don't remember where it was, right? It could be, on WhatsApp, it could be in Telegram, or it could be a Twitter thread. That sort of thing. So, and now, if you want to get back to that context, you'd need to go and check on every service, search every web service, and then it takes several seconds, obviously, because it's not incremental. There is latency involved, and that sort of thing. And you're discouraged from using that because it's going to be a cognitive burden, I guess. Yeah. And then another problem is that the interfaces the platforms, typical big tech platforms, give to you are usually dumb down to like a common denominator. And I'm sure many of you are been frustrated by at least some platforms, and because they also optimize for engagement or that sort of thing, instead of optimizing for presenting data in some efficient format. And again, as I mentioned, as I mentioned, I'm a big fan of quantified self, and looking at my data stats, that sort of thing, and trying to get some insight. And with all the big tech collects enormous amounts of data, but it's only used for optimizing ads a bit, and even that it's kind of done poorly. Imagine if you could get personalized health recommendations, right, based on your patterns of I don't know, food consumption, exercise, sleep, that sort of thing. But because of all the privacy concerns, and because all the data is again siloed in different data providers, it just sits there and does nothing. Like in best case, you get some sort of plot or some random sleep score, which doesn't mean anything because it's just a formula. Yeah.
Not just only a formula, but a formula that isn't documented anywhere because it's specific to the GUI and product that you're looking at.
Yep. And and that's kind of the problem, because basically, with health data, that stuff is very subjective often. So, my sleep tracker shows me, you 10 out of 10, and and I feel like crap. So something's definitely not right. And again, it's it's a kind of, I think it's a very personalized thing, because different people, different data plays different role in different people's lives. So we should be able to quickly conjecture something and check it, because and my basically my hypothesis. Oh, sorry, my hypothesis is. Sorry. Okay, that's better. Is that unifying the data behind a single, local programmatic interface would make it much easier. And I'll elaborate now what I mean by that. So first, why local? Because probably anyone, I mean, if if you need to integrate with some REST API, it's going to suck, at least to some extent. Because I mean, first, you're going to need to receive a token. You're going to do some authentication. Then, sometimes it expires. Then you need, you can't just download the whole thing. You usually need to paginate for, there are good purposes to do that. But the problem is, it's hard to reconstruct it into, keeping consistency. And generally, it's very error prone. Like you might have network glitch. You might hit API rate limit. So it's very tedious. Basically, the process of data export is very tedious, and that's why it's hard to get it right and efficient at the same time. So I feel like if we interact through local quote unquote cache, which ideally shouldn't be just cache, it's just full, you can reconstruct everything from it. It makes it much easier, because then it's just, if you made a mistake, you won't have to wait for an hour to refresh your API limits. You just rerun the program and it runs in an instant, right? Then why programmatic? So first of all, it's basically, when I say programmatic, I guess there are some alternatives. For example, sometimes people will try pushing all their data like in a single database, and then exposing that. And I think some coding is inevitable anyway, because someone needs to write, data exporters, data normalizers, parsing. Then even if you use a database, you need to, at some point, you'd need them to migrate. I'll elaborate on that a bit later. So you need to code anyway. I believe at least someone needs to code. And basically, if that needs to be coded at some point, I think we could just take it a step further and also expose the code to the end user, because it gives them a more powerful interface. So yeah, and code is great because it has an entry barrier, obviously, but then once you can program, you at least know how to work around stuff. You can compose it, you can interoperate, you can leverage on your existing knowledge and build new stuff. And I guess the final thing is if you that the data, it doesn't have to come from a specific app, as in when imagine you using some, I don't know, nutrition tracker. Usually they would be somewhat restrictive, right? They would allow you to put maybe to select I don't know which food you had for breakfast, which food you had for lunch, which food you had for dinner, and then you would put like how many grams of what you had. But often people what people want is do some sort of freeform input, and maybe then think how they want to, adjust the input format later. Basically the idea is that often you don't need apps to do many things. It's fine to just record the data, and then you maybe can parse it or reorganize that sort of thing. And yeah. Any questions so far?
No, good. Keep going. I mean, I think maybe we can pause, and I think that there's a lot here to unpack. You're scratching an itch. I think lots of people want to do this. I actually want to ask a question of like this. This is you scratching an itch, basically.
It's a big itch.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. As in, it's kind of how do you say it? Escalated, I wanted to be a bit more efficient at like learning stuff, so I needed search. You say you browse Reddit, and I mean, we could actually show probably. So for example, this is a key binding for my Emacs, and I can now search, I don't know, quantum field theory. So yeah, I wanted to be a bit more efficient with my interaction with information, yeah. Anyway,
Right, but I think this is an interesting, like, we shouldn't handwave over this. There's something interesting here, which basically says, many of us, all of us, the world are knowledge workers.
Yep.
And we have terrible tooling.
Yep.
And I mean, precisely as you said, many platforms might optimize something like for engagement rather than where the heck was that Twitter thread from 3 years ago, right? So I get that. I want to dig a little bit, if you'll allow me, and basically go, is this, are you thinking that you want to, like, this is single player mode?
Yeah.
Do you want, what is your thinking on making this available to other people or things like essentially protocols? And maybe that's a bigger discussion that we can leave for the end. So.
Yeah, I mean, so it depends on what you mean by making it available. I guess in terms of code and stuff, it's all open source. So I'm not trying to build a platform from it. And I'm not sure. Again, with a programmatic API, you basically, there is no chance it's going to be massively adopted unless, yeah.
And anyway, this is, I think, do you want to talk a little bit about dog sheep and perkeep? I think that's useful for context.
Yeah. I mean, I was about to basically. So, oh, did I switch the slide? No. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I guess. Yeah. As for, I've been kind of contemplating, this thing, for a while, and I just been searching for something existing because I don't like programming actually, and it's just what you have to do to achieve something. So yeah, and there are basically not two types, but one kind of things. Now and then people would do a platform. Usually it's a closed platform which would connect to a bunch of services, through the regular mechanisms of like OAuth tokens or that sort of thing. It would suck in the data and then do something with it. And they appear and disappear pretty quickly because it's probably, I mean, it's kind of a massive work, and it's also it's messy, it's hard to maintain. And I mean, I'm not sure if it's that's what in that sense I believe in. It's probably much easier it's probably much more sustainable as an open source effort, because data providers for some services only like 10 people might care about it. So and it needs to be possible to integrate somehow. And yeah, so I guess the closest what I know of are Dogship and Perkeep. So Dogship is it's I guess it's kind of similar in some sense. It's a project which the basic idea is that you run some data import into like SQL databases, and also Dogship is a bunch of tools for analyzing this data, quickly computing some stats, plotting stuff, and that sort of thing. The main problem for me with Dogship is I found it not that recent, or I mean, failed recently, maybe a year ago. But the main problem is because it's keeping stuff. So first of all, I guess first disclaimer is it's possible to, if you have a programmatic API, it's possible to import it in Dogship. But the other way around, you need to write code to make it. What I want to say is it's easier if you have an abstract API in Python. It's easier to make a database from it than the other way around, because you need to, you'd need to, because databases are not as expressive as Turing complete programming language. So you'd need to spend again, and it's going to be work that you need to repeat to figure out how stuff is stored in the database, then map it onto abstract objects, that sort of thing. And I guess another problem is that not all data maps onto a relational model. So and then again, you need code at some point. But again, I think the Dogship is a very cool project, and yeah, and I want to integrate with it a bit more, as in to reuse interfaces, and so we could. It's kind of complementary, basically. So they have great interfaces, whereas I've been concentrating more on the data part. Yeah, as for Perkeep, it's a bit it's a bit weird. I mean, I didn't get it. I tried a few times and I didn't quite get it. They seem to be, and again, I feel like it's a bit complementary sort of thing, because they're more. So what Perkeep does is they provide some sort of object storage, which I think also, supposedly it has easy synchronization across computers, and some tools for data, for visualizing data and analysis again. But it was, I mean, I tried importing some data and I couldn't find how to interact with it apart from Go, and
Perkeep used to be called Camly Store. It's by Brad Fitz. For those who don't know Brad Fitz, he's invented a lot of the protocols that we all use. He was at LiveJournal, and so a lot of the OpenID and other stuff comes from him, and a bunch of other data formats. And of course, he was at Google working on Go, and he's now working on Tailscale. So Perkeep is super interesting. It also is one of those things I attempted to get it running. I kind of had it running once. There's enough infrastructure to run that you have to kind of be a home DevOps engineer to run, which is another reason of like, oh, right, this isn't going to get like mass adoption. But it solved problems for Brad, where he was like, I don't want to lose everything that's in Flickr or Dropbox or Twitter or whatever. And then he has this blob server, universal data, no single point of failure. Your data should be alive in 80 years, especially if you are, is one of his phrases, which is amazing, right? Yeah.
No, yeah. I mean, it's definitely, yeah. It seems to be a cool, and I wanna give it another go. As in, again, I feel it's kind of complementary what I'm doing and what Azay doing. As in, again, I've been mainly working on programming interface and normalizing and processing the data. So then ideally you would be able to, and it's kind of one of the points, so you can just write a small adapter and plug in the data anywhere. Yeah, I'm hoping to give it another go. It's just yeah, I guess I'll elaborate on that a bit further. Yeah. So yeah, and when I realized there is nothing existing, I just started thinking what do I actually want to do, because it's obviously a hard problem. Again, many startups attempted and it didn't quite work. So I kind of figured out I want something like a data mirror. So ideally it's an application, or it's a process or whatever that runs on client side and just sucks in the data locally, and then I have data bindings, which I call data access layer. We just reads that data stored on the file system and do something with it. And so yeah, to address the previous point that you need to run PerKeep, you need some I mean, it runs a blob store, that sort of thing. In comparison here, it writes to a file and you read from a file. So you can run it on your phone if necessary. As in, you don't need in a simple, again, you kind of need to be a programmer, I guess. If you need to install a Python package, but again, it's a massive difference comparing to managing a database or.
I think the line in the sand here ends up being there's being a developer, being able to program and having a file system on one end, and on the other end there is running and maintaining a stack. So whether and if the stack is more than your operating system, then there's more things that you have to learn, maintain, run, etc. Right? We'd call that DevOps today. But it's interesting programming. You can't just program for yourself on your own operating system and have it never leave your machine. We don't think of it that way because we usually think of deploying somewhere because the context is often multiplayer. But I think this puts us almost more in a hypercard-like context. And I think that's one of the reasons that this like Rome research and everything else is taking off, because we're giving end users programmable interfaces.
Yeah, and I guess it's kind of, so the important bit is I guess I'm making a lot of emphasis on it should be easy to program and interoperate. So for example, if you have some data, if it's stored in a JSON file on your computer, first thing the minimal programming you can do is you can grep it, right? Even though JSON is not necessarily grep is not necessarily the best tool for JSON, you already can get something useful from it immediately, right? Whereas if it's in an object store, here we go. You need to read some documentation and figure out how to map it through some port because it's in Docker or something like that. So yeah, and I guess I'll elaborate a bit more on that further. So yeah, and I guess fun fact is that phone apps, at least, I mean, I'm not sure about iPhones, but probably the same thing. So because phone apps run unlimited connectivity, or at least 10 years ago, it was definitely the case, right? Phone apps usually have a local cache like SQLite database, so you can use it offline or with wonky connection. And it's basically what I want, in the sense that it runs, periodically syncs the data, and then you can use it. And it's already in like some structured format, which SQLite is even it's not perfect, but it's not some web scale database, right? You can open it in SQLite editor or just dump into text and grab, so again, it's very composable in that sense. But the problem with phones is that because it's all locked down, you can't see your own data on the phone unless you're rooted, which is kind of ridiculous. That to extract, I don't know, data from my temperature sensor, which syncs on the phone, I need to root my phone. But that's a sad reality. And it's all again, it's a kind of saying that you don't just need to be. You don't need to be a programmer to root your phone, but it's quite an endeavor. Like so normal people won't root their phone, and there are also good reasons not to root your phone. So yeah, it's all locked down for various security reasons and quite ridiculous. But still, the point is, yeah, and I guess so. Just for fun, yeah, this is a slide about how it's going, and this is sort of what my system looks now, and it's like it's a fairly partial diagram. So I didn't include everything because it wouldn't fit at all. So the idea is that data flows from upside down, and so for example, here I have a temperature sensor which syncs on the phone, which has a file system cache on the phone, which syncs through SyncThing. And so here as well, for example, here we've got Instapaper, which has API, and then export scripts suck in the data, through periodically syncing it onto the file system. And then the actual HPI thing, it does all the interpretation of the data, and then we can feed it to different data, provide to the end users of the data. So, like I mentioned, Prometheus thing, or I have org mode views onto the data, so which I showed before, so I can quickly search over it. And there is lots of stuff in progress, basically, which I'm trying to integrate. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know, any questions about that? No. It's yeah, again, it's all online, so you can stare at it if you want. Yeah. So I guess a bit about how it works. I might should I? Yeah. Anyway, so the basic like quote unquote architecture I had is separating the export process and the using data process. So when you use the data, you always read from the offline cache, and when you export data, you're only the only thing you need to do is just to reliably write data onto disk, and that's it. So the key principle is for me was to basically to reuse existing API bindings, because often people write them from scratch, and then it's hard to make it consistent because if you need to reconstruct the original data from all the pages and that sort of thing. Yeah, and I guess the kind of important thing is that most of it is like it's append only, in the sense that, so for example, say I'm again, say Instapaper. When I export data from Instapaper, I would at the export time I would generate a completely new file and just put it in the Instapaper exports directory. So it would be timestamped, and if I export once a day, say in a year, I would get 365. Yes, it's so that many files. And again, the basic idea is that the point of why is that is to make it as easy as possible to start exporting the data, because if you don't have to think about, merging it into the existing data you already have, yeah, so your only task is just to extract the data, and it makes it much easier. And why is that? Yeah, so it makes it quasi real time, because you obviously, if you're reading the data from the disk, it's not the most recent, but so it's kind of a trade-off, and it's possible to work around it. It's just tedious because you could have some process which pings an endpoint and figures out if you need to re-download everything. But yeah, so far I haven't done that. As an example, for most data I'm just exporting once a day, for example in the morning, and it works fine. For some, just a few times a day. And I guess so one important aspect is when you export the data, often the problem is that you can't receive all data from the API, because there are all sorts of restrictions. So for example, the most common is you would only receive several hundred posts or events. Pretty much any API like GitHub, Reddit, whatever, they have it. So even if you can never export everything from the API. So you need some way of running it, basically reconstructing the whole thing from partial exports. Does that make sense? So yeah, there's a typo here, but yeah, basically, so what I mean by full export is sometimes you can't just export everything at once. If say, I don't know, Pocket articles, I think it just gives you all the data, because how many articles you're gonna have there, like several thousand at most, maybe. Some of them, for some of them, it's not feasible really to do a full export every time. For example, if you want to get all your Telegram messages, there are going to be quite a few of them, and it's going to be a toll on servers if you and they have API limits for a reason. So in that case, you kind of resort to a database and to merging new stuff into the database. And the kind of a middle ground is what I call synthetic exports. Again, yes, there is a typo here. It's not some pun. The idea is that you basically export the say every day you export the latest slice of data, and then at the time of using the data, you just reconstruct the whole thing. So you just merge individual slices together. Yeah, and yeah, so the trade-off here basically is that it uses it uses more disk space, obviously, because if you keep all that intermediate data, but there are some ways of working around it, because you can prune, if you're careful.
I mean, realistically, I don't think that. I think the biggest thing that is damaging is thinking that we're in a storage constrained universe when we are not. Especially when you're talking text formats mainly, right?
Yep. I mean, say, for example, say you want to, mainly. So for example, again, Pocket, if you export it every day, you're never gonna fill your disk. But say, for example, you want to keep your browser history in Firefox. It has a retention of 90 days. So, for like some, I don't know, privacy purposes, maybe. But the point is, if you don't export it regularly, you're going to lose it. And if you're a data hoarder like me, it's completely unacceptable. And it does add up sometimes. So, or for example, even Google Takeout, it also has a retention. So if you want your full past history from Google takeout, you're gonna have to keep some intermediate exports. You can't just always keep the last one. And it's and it's also kind of a hard problem, because basically it's another reason I'm focusing on append only and keeping the data intact, because you don't know unless you carefully stare at data and go through everything, you don't know what you might be missing on. APIs might return more data or whatnot. So yeah, but yeah, basically the point is kind of it's trading space for robustness, and I think it's a fair trade. Yeah. So, and the next part is the data access layer, which is just reading the raw data and reconstructing it. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to elaborate onto that. Yeah, but basically it's kind of related, because again, often the approach for exporting data is that people would come up with some schema, and they would start, they would keep that single database and merge new data into it. The problem with that is that it needs maintenance. So it works if there is like a full-time person who can say the schema for the API schema changes, and your export is failing now because some columns are not there. If there is a person who looks at it always, it's going to be fine. You can they're going to fix it. If you think, okay, I might have some time next week to fix it, the problem is keeping raw data and thinking about interpreting it later. It makes it more it makes it easier to you won't lose the data, basically, because the export is failing.
Less brittle.
Basically, yeah, because the export export is as reliable as necessary, and not as necessary. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. And yes, and another problem with databases is that, like I said, not everything fits into the relation model. So you, at some point, you're going to need to squeeze it into tables and then unsqueeze back, and then you need code for that anyway. SQLite, SQLite types kind of suck, but it's not just SQLite, just as in because programming languages are always more expressible. So you're always gonna be much better at validating the data on programming language level. And the last thing is that databases, if your format changes and you ruin your data in a data, it's easier to ruin your data in a database. Whereas during probably all of us probably have written an untested database migration. And what I mean is, so if you just parse data from scratch every time, what that happens is that your program crashes, but the data is intact. Whereas if you mess the migration, you just ruin the data. In contrast, files files are good, because once you have a file, you can already interact with it without even programming, just with command line tools. It's easy to reason about them. It's easy to back up. Even if probably many people here ran a Docker container, but then if you even to figure out Boris gave an example of Perkeep, because it probably runs in Docker, and you're not quite sure what its state is. If you're reinstalling your system or moving on to a different computer, what do you need to back up? So it's probably all documented, but still, if it's a file, you can always look in a file and double check that stuff is there. And yeah, and it's also very easy to sync because you can just run, sync on Dropbox, which synchronize, file systems basically. And you don't need any APIs or whatever, and it makes it, basically offline. And I guess it's tangentially, it's kind of related to what Fission is doing, right? Because if it's, you can sync on IPFS, for example, and then you can, you can write an application which runs against IPFS. Oh, sorry. Well, yeah. On the other hand, databases have obvious, upsides because it's very efficient, it's very fast, and it's also a free query language. So as for the first 2 points, sometimes it's justified to use a database. So, for example, if you have an export of your chat history, or again, if you have several thousand files and you reconstruct the whole thing from them, you want some sort of cache. And I have a small library which basically leverages on Python typing annotations and maps it into columns. But the point is that the cache is just a matter of single annotation. And you don't need to, it's very robust in the sense that it's transient, right? So if the cache corrupts, it's fine because the data, it doesn't affect the data. It can automatically invalidate if the data, if the data sources have changed. So it gives you the best of both, right? You get the best performance, and you also get the ease of working with code without thinking, if you're going to corrupt the data. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So as for actual, I guess, features which HPI has is, yeah, like I said, it's local first and actually fully offline. If you're willing to use, not the most recent data, it's possible to enrich data. So, for example, by mixing in different data sources, say I have time zone information from my Google location, but my sleep tracker doesn't have, it keeps everything in local time. And I would, and for correlating the data, it's kind of, if we wanted to get the time zone right. Also, living in London makes it very annoying because it's very hard to spot time zone errors. Yeah, but basically I can I can mix in data sources and enrich, for example, sleep data with time zones from Google location. Another nice thing is it makes it easy to merge the data from different sources. So, for example, as I mentioned, often from APIs, you won't get all the data back to the beginning. But the nice thing we have, at least in Europe, is GDPR exports, which which are annoying because they're manual, but at least it gives you a more or less complete view on the data. And then with HPI, several data sources, they would basically parse initial stuff from GDPR export and then rely on API data for a full view. Then it also helps with dead services. For example, I used Jawbone for sleep tracking, which died, and obviously the device is useless because yeah. And now I'm using a different tracker called EMFeed. But the point is, it was possible for me to just write a small adapter and to merge the data in a single stream, so I can just process it. Similar with exercise. So, for example, I used to use Endomondo, which also died last year, and I switched to a different open source tracker. Even better because it's writing onto the file system on my phone. Yeah, but the point is I can get a unified stream of data from dead services. So yeah, and yeah, it's because it's a Python program, so it's extensible, and there are lots of interactions. Not interactions. interoperation I'm working on. Yeah. As for some specific projects, I guess I wanted to mention. Right now I'm working on Grafana and better Grafana integration, because there is a lot of stuff that can be automated just by looking at type annotations, because it gives you some schemas for free. And basically the point is it's possible to to connect a data source and you will get a Grafana integration for free. Then data setter, which has nice tools for processing, for analyzing databases. And again, because I'm using this cache thing, which already gives it is basically a free SQLite interface. Yeah. Then Solid, I don't know, maybe people heard of it. It's a bit of I guess they're kind of doing it from scratch in a sense, because it's got, I think what's it got? It's got a concept of pods with data which you can selectively share with other parties and apps and that sort of thing. But yeah, again, the point is it's kind of complementary, because if I can just upload the data from existing servers to Solid pod, it makes it much easier to migrate or to use a Solid app or to share with other people. That's, I guess, addresses the multiplayer thing. Then a memory, it's a new project which also does a similar thing. Just if I don't know, you probably haven't heard of it, I recommend checking out. They're a bit quiet, but they're doing cool stuff. Also trying to essentially unify data behind a single interface, with some cool semantic stuff. Yeah, Open Humans, which is a quantified self platform. The idea is that they've got some Jupyter notebooks for data processing, and it would be cool if you could, regardless the exact sleep tracker or exercise tracker you're using, if you could write a small adapter and just use existing data analysis. Yeah, and again, like I mentioned, Perky. Another stuff I would like to try is interlanguage, so for basically foreign function interface. I've been looking at, I'm kind of thinking of using Apache Arrow for it, because it's meant to be super efficient, I think. But again, because it's a programming API, it already can communicate. It already can return a JSON stream, so you can feed it into any, like JavaScript app, for example. You can feed API data into that, or you can run HTTP API. And also, I already did some experiments. So, for example, I would spawn a node and connect to it from observable notebook. Yeah. Another thing I'm doing is I'm trying to establish some sort of community, because I'm reaching my personal productivity ceiling. So need to find more people to build that stuff. So everyone's welcome to join. Yeah, I guess there are some minor things. I like it's kind of tedious to set up if you're not a programmer, especially Python programmer, because there are cron jobs involved. API you still need to connect with APIs. You need to write configs, that sort of thing. So even I guess I'm trying to make everything as vanilla Python as possible, leveraging on using Python for configs, so it's flexible and people who know Python can understand it. Then leveraging on MyPy on the Python packaging system. Yeah, just to make the overhead as little as possible. But it's still it would be cool if it was simpler for more regular people. I say regular, but even if you're a programmer, again, it's kind of a journey to set all this stuff up, because there is also always some undocumented. things. Yeah, I guess that's probably it.
Amazing, thank you. That's great, Dima. Yeah, that's a lot. So how long have you been working on this?
It depends. I mean, it's kind of it's hard to tell. I mean, maybe it's not that I started this project as in I started with writing, you know, data parsers and some small processing. I guess the first time I got kind of interested is maybe 5 years ago, when I figured, okay, I wanted to get something from my sleep tracker. So, you know, I connected to the API, started exporting stuff. Yeah, and then it kind of snowballed. Yeah, so I mean, the first, yeah, I guess at some point it just got merged from all the small. I realized there are some as in, yeah, I guess the only reason why it has to be, not it has to be, but why it is a single, why a Python package representing it exists is just there are some patterns and some shared functionality which is nice to use. So but ideally it would be decoupled from the, so currently all the modules and the core lives in the same repository, but it's just because it's I mean, for now there aren't many contributors, and it's just easier to maintain as a, you know, monolith. But I wouldn't as in, yeah, that's kind of again, it's kind of similar to Emacs in the sense that you know, if say with Spacemacs, it's basically drowned in pull requests because all the modules live in the same you know, repository. So yeah, I don't know if it reaches such adoption that I start getting, you know, pull requests every day or something, and then it would be good to split probably. But yeah, again, so that's kind of another benefit of Python, because you can just rely on Python packaging, and it doesn't have to be you know, coupled, more or less.
So it's interesting that you're using the calling it a memex. You've got kind of a bunch of different things. You've got kind of like a notes, tools for thought sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then you've got like a quantified self, personal health data thing, where you're kind of merging them. And I think there's almost this third piece where you're like browsing data. I think that's the really unique piece. I haven't seen a lot of that. So that's your Promnesia. That's,
yeah.
Is that a specific project that's sort of separate?
It's a. I'll just put a screenshot just to. It's. I mean, it's again. It's kind of it. At some point, so it's the main user, not main user. It's probably the main consumer of HPI because it makes and the, I guess I can actually show. So for example, here is a Promnesia module for Instapaper links, and you know, it's kind of trivial. It's mostly boilerplate. It just goes through HPI data. You know, extracts links and emits visits, which are just entities that represent stuff in the sidebar, and stuff in the sidebar, like here. Yeah. So yeah. So yes, and I kind of, again, Promnesia was kind of, I've been contemplating it for a while and searching for existing tools, because I basically wanted for something. You know, to remind me that I have this link somewhere, or I've seen that Twitter profile somewhere. And I actually, yeah, I also used to think that I had a terrible memory at some point, so I wanted to compensate for it with a computer. That's that's all I can do. Yeah. So,
we all want cyborg abilities, and mostly computers fail us at this, as they fail us at most things.
Yeah. I mean, it's yeah, it's not just computers, I guess, as in, yeah, as in, yeah, computers don't deliver to promises, but it's
So-
not just computer problem.
So basically, for someone who wants to get started, go to the HPI, start looking at it, start plugging in what data sources that are used. Is there sort of a default interface for HPI for someone using this?
So they can, let me just, oh, no. Sorry. Never mind. Never mind. Yeah, I was just thinking of doing a demonstration, but no. So it's kind of, it depends on what do you want. So for example, Promnesia, you can actually use it in the simplest case. You don't even need HPI. You can just run it against local files on your computer, like Markdown, org mode, plain text, even source code. It just eats everything, and it connect. Yeah, even simpler. You don't even need to run it against anything. It can
look at your browser history for starters.
Yeah, browser history, but it's kind of it's not as useful because it's kind of sparse and also doesn't have much context. Yeah, for HPI, I get
the context has to come from somewhere. So basically, in many ways, Promnesia is an interface that gives you a context engine from the web built on your own data. So if you feed it more things using HPI, you can add more context.
Exactly, yeah. So the problem, it's kind of an uncanny, I guess, unless you get enough, enough data. It's not useless, but it's harder to use because you miss some of the context. Whereas, yeah, if you get a very detailed timeline of stuff, it starts being very useful. Because so, for example, for Promnesia, yeah. So, for example, there is a short demo. So yeah, here it shows a bookmark. It's not a bookmark; it's just clipping in my org mode stuff. So it's on a computer, and I can click on it, and it would open Emacs on exact line where it occurs, which is so far so good. But I don't remember why I added this book. So I can click on a timestamp, and it shows like a timeline of all the different events. Yeah, and so here I can see that I've been on John Byers' page, which recommended it, and John Byers is this physicist who's cool and explains why I added the bookmark. Yeah, and basically the more events you have, the better context you get, and it's actually so it's also true about quantified self, for example, because the insights. I mean, if people done any machine learning, it's usually it's rarely some, not really, but yeah, basically the data is very noisy, so you need a lot of data and a lot of arbitration and
right. So as an example, if you have an anomaly or something that looks like that, where you had a 2,000 calorie meal, but then you look and you went on a 120 kilometer bike ride for the previous 2 hours, you're like, okay, well, that would be why.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and it's also so for it's also important because if you're using a single sleep tracker, for example, you don't know what biases it might have or just glitches or artifacts. Whereas if you can compare the data from, or even if you could use a phone app for a few days and just to compare, so basically the more data, the more useful it becomes. It's just there is some threshold. Yeah, and I guess back to your original question for what people could, I mean, Promnesia would be a good start because it's kind of I mean, not for everyone, but for some people, it immediately clicks how it's useful. And it's yeah, and you don't. I guess the nice bit is that first it runs against local files, so it's relatively easy to start, and then it's easier to motivate yourself to add interfaces to
the sources.
Yeah. But otherwise, it's there is as I mentioned, there is Augur, which is my org mode interface to some stuff. So for example, this is can I? Oh yeah, I can scale it. Yeah, this is Materialistic, which is an app for hack and use on my Android, and it's great. The only problem is the maintainer hasn't responded for years now, but the app is still the best. And so yeah, the problem is when you save stuff there, it doesn't synchronize with hack and use, but it does save it in a local SQLite database, which you can't see unless you root your phone. But read it's nice to scroll through the feed when you're on a walk or stuff, but it's not nice to actually read it because I want a desktop, I want to annotate sometimes, I want to organize information, so I usually I kind of often separate the act of like filtering the information just by bookmarking. Yeah, so I have a tool which sucks in bookmarks from different sources into org mode files. So so you can see on the side here, if you see the line, it's a git changes. So stuff here I haven't processed yet. Stuff above I put some. Basically, what I do is I put some priority on it, and then I sort everything and do a few bits from the top. So stuff which is not as interesting as things, but I might never look at it, but it's there, right? So I can find it again because of a local search, I can find it anytime.
You're searching your own context rather than starting with a zero context web search or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's I think it's kind of a shame how do you remember there was this Google desktop thing that's years ago, and it would index your local stuff and then present and it's so for example on my phone I still don't have anything like it, which is I could write an app, but it's going to be work and yet another project which I already kind of
have a lot. Exactly.
And it's I think so basically it's a shame files aren't used more.
Amazing. What else? So the Zulip chat is the best way if people want to get involved and talk live.
Probably
with you. Okay, so I'll drop that in the chat there.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. I'll share the slides later as well. Oh, sorry, where was it?
Perfect. Yeah. Usually what we'll do is I'll do one more thank you and then we'll stop recording. So thank you very much, Dima.